Aloha mai kako i nā hoa kipa, nā hoa aina, nā hoa kāko'o i nā aina a pau. Mai kahikina a ke komohana, mai ka akau a ka hema, nā hoa pinipu me ke kupa'a ana i ke aloha no ka aina a me ka pono a me nā ea o ko kākou po'e a pau. Aloha, everyone, all friends who are gathered here, friends in solidarity for social justice from wherever you are coming to us in dedication to the land and to the communities that are fed by it. We welcome you here today and thank you for joining in this space for our talk story and virtual Kanikapila with June Millington, who we are so honored to be hosting. I'd like to also, I'm Tai Kavika Tengan. I'm the chair of the Department of Ethnic Studies. And I'm also happy to thank the co-sponsors that we have. We've received support from Women's Studies, Center for Philippine Studies, LGBTQ plus Center, Student Equity, Student Excellence, Equality, and Diversity Initiative, and the College for Social Sciences. And with that, I will hand it off to Rich. Thanks for joining us.
And of course, we could not be doing this without the tremendous support of the Ethnic Studies Department, and in particular, Tai Tengan and Skyu Lewis, who will. Yep, there he is. Skyu is the person behind the curtains making us all look good. I would just want to give a big thank you for that. There's a couple of things a little bit unusual about this session, or one thing a little unusual. We're going to try this out. It's called a virtual Kanikapila, so a virtual jam session. If you can record a little bit of what June is saying and playing, along with whatever you're singing or playing, and you send me your recording, I'll cobble together all the good parts and send them back to you guys and to June, and we can see if we can get anything cool out of that. So you can record on your phone or you can record on a laptop, better quality. But just however you do it is fine, and don't worry about it. It'll sound great. The other thing is that we're going to have an interactive format. June really wants to hear from you guys, and we'll pass any questions along to June as they arise, as long as they're appropriate. With that, I want to introduce Joyce Mariano, who's going to introduce June. She's associate professor in American Studies, and I'm just going to turn it right over to Joyce in the interest of time to introduce our guest.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Ty. Yes, I teach a class every year in American Studies and Ethnic Studies on Filipino Americans, and I'm just so thrilled to be here. Thank you. So I'm going to take 2-3 minutes to give the briefest overview of June Millington's approach to life. June grew up playing music as a child in the 1950s in the Philippines. Moving to the United States just as she hit her teens, June was shy, but curious and determined. She quickly became aware of the doubleness of American life, being a brown woman in white America, in it, looking out, while in some respect, looking in from the outside still. June started playing music to ease those feelings of otherness. She had early successes playing with all young women. She experienced the whole of the West Coast 60s era through the lens of music, and her first few bands, the Spelts, then Wild Honey, then at the turn of the 60s, Fanny. Written off as novelty, the band mastered the art of balancing good girl, bad girl personas to get in the door of clubs, and then surprising people with the fact that an all-girl band rocked hard like they did. Record executives, however, that they would be but a novelty act. Fearless Joy. June and Fanny carved out a space for what they did, and in so doing, they opened the door for all of the women bands that followed: the Runaways, the Donnas, L5, the Go-Go's, the Bangles, and uncountable young women, probably some of them here tonight, aspiring to walk the path that June and her bands trailblazed. Taking a step back from the wild ride of the 60s and the early 70s, June recalibrated and opened the Institute for Musical Arts with her partner, Ann Hackler. The emphasis has been teaching and mentoring young women to work collaboratively at something. And here's something being making music, and to approach creating from scratch with a group of other young women with, yet again, fearless joy as they learn to embrace playing like a girl. I'm going to buy that t-shirt for my daughter as soon as we're done with tonight's event. June continues making music and has been involved in different roles and in several documentaries. We welcome her tonight for a talk story and this virtual Kanekapila. So please give a warm welcome to June Millington.
Okay, I unmuted my mic. Hi, everyone. This is great. I'm not sure how I can see everyone. I'm seeing, the main people, but I guess guests are here. Gee, that was so well done. That was unbelievable. I really love that. And yes, I grew up in the Philippines, and the otherness piece is really big. Or for me, it's big for how we even got started playing. In my book Land of a Thousand Bridges, I describe how we were driving from Manila to Baguio, and those of you who know the Philippines know that Baguio is higher up and it's much cooler than Manila. And above that is the seventh wonder of the world, which is the Ifugao rice terraces. And I remember being in the car, being in the back seat with Jean, and probably one or two of our brothers, and our mom and dad in the front seat, and the rice fields, just rice field after rice field, and they're big kind of green, beautiful squares, and we were just whizzing by them. But while that was happening, we're listening to by Chain Gang by
Sam Cooke.
Sam Cooke. Right. So, and I understood something about that song. I understood the groove, you know, but I also understood the musical quality of his melody and how he was singing, and then of course all the sound effects. There's a sound, with the chains or whatever they put in. It was really incredible, and his phrasing, just the whole thing with the rice fields. And we had to have learned that on ukulele. I mean, how could you not? That's just like four chords. There's basically, when we started to play ukuleles, we started to hear, because nobody gave us lessons. Somebody handed us a uke, maybe a cousin or an uncle or something. Hey, you should play this. The only lesson we got was, this is how it's tuned. My dog has fleas. In fact, I have a ukulele right here. You know? So, that's really the beginning. It didn't deal with the otherness part right away, but it connected us with both the Philippines, and I didn't know what a chain gang was. We didn't know what he was singing about. There's the sound of the chain gang. We knew it was something intense, but that's the sound of the man working on the chain gang. That's the sound of the man working on the chain. What would that be? Chain gang. So there you go with it was so beautiful, really. You can do it on ukulele, you can do it with a huge band. So, but can you put up that first picture that I sent you, Rich, is there any way that I'm sitting with family in the Philippines and I'd like to do Magtanim Hindi Biro for those of you who, know the song and are for this is one of the first songs that you start singing this in kindergarten. Um,
I, I'm working on the picture.
okay. Magtanim hindi biro, makapon na kayo ko, di naman nakatayo, di naman makaupo, sa umaga sa umaga pagising, lahat ay usipin, kung saan may patanim, may masarap ng pagkain, halina, halina, tayo'y magsaya, tayo'y magsipag-unat-unat, sa panibago tayo ng lahat, para sa araw ng bukas. Bonjing! So, that has the whole thing. Bonjing, you pretty much had to do that at the end of every song. The end! So, that really is so much wonderful training and rhythm, and probably I pulled out some lyrics because really the ear training for us. There you go. So that's my dad. That's Jean. Now who's that? I can't really quite see. Probably
I'm sorry. I did have the right screen. Okay. Yeah.
That's my mom, one of my uncles, one of our aunts. This is me and my grandfather, like trying to, I don't know, distract me or whatever. This is our grandmother. She was really the one who ran the whole thing, as it turns out. One of my aunts, another aunt, another uncle, two, I think those are two cousins. This is the oldest boy in the family who was a fraternity brother of Marcos in college. But there's even more history with President Marcos. When the Japanese had taken over the Philippines, essentially, my family hid Marcos for about a year, and he pretended to be the houseboy. So whenever the Japanese would come to search the house, which they did a lot in the grounds, he was protected by my family. And there's something called utang na loob. I don't know, maybe some of you know what that is, but that's like basically a debt that can never be repaid. So what I'm saying is my uncle was very close to Marcos, and we were actually related to all the the higher oligarchy in the Philippines. I have lots of feelings about that, but let's don't go into that. Let's just, stick with me. I mean, there is politics associated with that. But by the way, here's Ann Hackler, our fearless leader. There you go. Here at IMA.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, here she is. She's going to be handing me the guitars and whatnot as I play, because I don't have really the wherewithal. I mean, I'm turning 73 on the 14th, and I don't really have the wherewithal anymore to like grab my guitars and not fall over. So anyway, are there any questions that anybody's got at this point? Because I mean, one thing I do want to point out in terms of otherness, because we grew up in our mother's mothers, our Lola and Lola's compound, it was big. And so a lot of people fit there. And because the Philippines basically is matrilocal, I mean, I know at the time it was definitely matrilocal. So my dad moved in with my mom's family, and they retrofitted the bottom floor to accommodate us and one of our aunts who was teaching English at the University of the Philippines. And my grandfather would not let her move out of the house because she was not married. Now, you could say that's like a really, that's an encoded thing, but she couldn't move out. So I hung out with her a lot downstairs. And one thing I remember a lot, and I'm sure a lot of people don't have this memory, but she had a beautiful flower vase by her bed. but mosquito larvae would, mosquitoes would lay their eggs there, and I would sit there hanging out with them. And I watched the larva go down and up, down. I made a joke once that that was my first larva lamp. But I'm glad you like that, Anne. So I had a really different upbringing, and went to a Philippine kindergarten, St. John's Academy, which all my family had gone to. And my dad in kindergarten didn't tell me, but he asked the teachers to switch me from being left-handed to right-handed because he was left-handed and he felt like he had been abused for that, I guess. And but I didn't know that, so it's kind of funny because I'm deaf in my left ear. I don't have equilibrium on my left side. That's always been the case. And so he hasn't switched me from left to right. I was, so my brain is trying to like figure the whole thing out. And, it has its in its own way, but I seem quite different to a lot of people if you get to know me. So that's one of the first things that made me feel like other. But the second I did music, everything popped in. None of it mattered. Nobody noticed. Till today, a lot of people don't even know that I'm deaf in my left ear, which is why in Fanny, Jean was always everyone was to my right. I can't stand it when I can't see people on stage, and I really don't even really. I mean, I can see out of my left eye, but I don't really perceive the left. Everything is skewed to the right. So, you know, that's just one little detail. But when we moved out of my grandfather's house, out of the compound, I think I was maybe first or second grade, and we moved to this house that was by the Wak Wak Club. I think I mentioned that to you, Richard, or somebody.
Yes,
The
yes.
Wak Wak Club that was brand new. There was just our house, a little creek, in the Wak Wak Club, and I started to go to the American school, and for me that was when I really was, it hit me. I was other. Most of the kids, American school, most of them were white, and a lot of them rode in a PT boat literally across Manila Bay to get to the school, right? And so their experience was really different from mine, and I was pretty sure that most of the kids weren't interested in me whatsoever. But when I got back to, I guess we were still living at my grandfather's house, or we picked up by his chauffeur and taken the anyway. When we would get to Lola and Lola's house, then everything would be, for me, culturally perfect. Even though it was Filipino, they spoke English to us, and we would play games together with everybody, including the houseboy and the maids, and all that. I would watch Rosine, the cook. She would be sitting with one of the maids also on the front porch, and they had this just a kind of a flat rattan, with a small short dish, and they'd have rice, and they'd do this, and so the rice would fall, and the chaff would be taken away by the wind. So these are cultural memories that I have that will never leave. I don't remember a lot of stuff, but I remember that. I remember that in particular. It was so ingrained. And I also remember going to our mom's hometown, Leon. And here's what you would do: you go to Tagaytay, which maybe some of you know, maybe some of you, a lot of you don't know, but that's it's the supposedly extinct volcano that every so many years does its thing and it explodes. But you go to the Gaitan, you look down, and there are the volcano surrounded by a lake, and people are actually living on that island. It's actually kind of weird that people live there, but they do. And so go to the Gaitan, you make a right, head for the China Sea, and you hit Leon about, I guess, an hour later. And it's a little town, and my great grandfather, I guess, more or less founded the town and definitely founded the bank there. And then 20 minutes out of Tagaytay, you get to the China Sea. And that's why in Play Like a Girl, the first verse is two little girls staring out at the sea, water touching China. It's as blue as can be. And that actually came to me in a dream. I woke up one day, and when was that? Maybe, I don't know, 2009 or something. And it was literally hanging in the air in front of me. So I know when I'm given something like that, something's going to happen, but I had no idea what. And that afternoon, I gave a guitar lesson to one of the girls who was attending, a rock and roll girls camps at the time. And uh, after the lesson, the chorus came to me, and just like verse after verse just came pouring out. And some of the verses are literally the girls talking through me, like the last verse. Shall I just maybe play it? Maybe, Ann, you could hand it to me. And the Les Paul. A couple of things about this song. In the choruses, you have to play a bass guitar part that's you can't not play it. You can't just play this for your rhythm part. Is this, let me see. And the reason it's not playing would be what? I sound checked this before. Okay. Why? Okay, give me 1 second here. Weird. It's off of standby. This, I'm playing through a hot rod, and they're so strong. Okay, so this is not working for the moment. Just give me that acoustic guitar, and maybe I can just play the lick that I'm talking about, and then I can get back to the electric guitar in just a minute. Okay, I'm sure you can hear the acoustic guitar. So you can't just do, like a normal. You have to do this. Come on. Then you can do, just a rhythm. And the reason for, here's a couple of things. There is really just one rock and roll lick, as I started playing. Right? But come on and rock the world. If they tell you you can't do it, you just turn it up and play like a girl. Do. So it's boy, when I first showed that to Jean, she said, "What?" Because you actually have to train your fingers to do those licks, because you want to just do the regular stock rock and roll licks, But this is how it came to me, and I just had to follow it. It wasn't even really easy for me either, but maybe I'll just try to sing some of it, What I love about this song is the end of the chorus. If they tell you you can't do it, you just turn it up and play like a girl. Okay? So don't try that at home, folks, because that can really hurt you. That's a hard lick. That is a June Millington lick, and I sat by the fire. Tell you girls the story, I won't tell you a lie. Anything you want, you can do it just fine. Come on, rock the world. If they tell you you can't do it, you just turn it up and play like a girl. Two little girls staring out of the sea. Water touching China, it's as blue as can be. Come on, rock the world. they tell you, I missed that. Damn right, turn it up and play like a girl. All right, and do the whole solo, which is electric. And what's the verse after the solo? Hmm.
So, June, we have a
You
couple
know.
questions lined up for you,
Oh,
if this is
great,
a good
great,
time.
great. Okay.
I'm
Annie,
going
can you
to
take the?
jump in and ask the first one. This is from Michaela, and it says, "My name is Michaela, and I am 8 years old. Do you play rock and roll?
Oh.
Hi." I'm taking the easy question.
Would you say that again? The last line?
Do you play rock and roll?
Would you say the last line? I didn't hear that.
Do you play rock and roll?
Yes, I do.
So
But
that's
here's the thing, Michaela. I didn't start. Oh, is that the end of the question?
yes, it's your
Is that the end?
yes.
Okay. Okay, so let me answer it. Um, Michaela, the thing is, I didn't really start to play hardcore rock and roll till we moved to Hollywood. And the reason for that is um, basically what the industry needed from us, and we realized it over a period of maybe 6 months or a year, that what the industry and what the audience wanted from us was hardcore rock. And I was not playing lead guitar when we moved to LA, and I had to learn how to play it in about a year because our lead guitar player quit. So moving backwards, ukulele first in the Philippines, then we switched to acoustic guitars right before we got on the ship to come to the Philippines. Jean was 12, I was 13. We we get on a ship in Manila and we arrive in San Francisco. Let me tell you, that was wow. That was to go under the Golden Gate Bridge was in the morning was really incredible. Anyway, we got in. My dad had bought a house in Sacramento, so we went to Sacramento, and that's when kind of the hard part began because we realized that we were definitely other. But then I started to write songs on acoustic guitar, and the first song I wrote was that we played in public was Miss Wallflower 62, and that gives you an idea of how I felt. But we did it with me and Jean and two other girls, and you know what? It was a hit. People loved it, and that's when we realized, wow, maybe we can make some friends through music. I mean, honestly, that's when the we figured out that the part of feeling like other could be somewhat dissipated, and it was slowly and surely, slowly but surely. So we're playing folk songs. And then Jean's boyfriend was in a surf band, and we would play between their sets like at bowling alleys. And so we were playing by then Motown, like Nowhere to Run by the Martha and the Vandellas. And then we all heard about this gig at a high school, probably just a high school hop that everyone um, could audition for. And by that time, a girl from another high school called us and said, "Hey, I play drums. I heard about you guys. Do you want to start a band?" And we're like, "Okay." So we all auditioned for the same gig, and we got it. Up until then, we've been using the boys' gear. They were so upset that we had to get our own equipment, and we went to our mom and our dad, and our dad said, "No, I mean, who's going to take care of everything?" But my mom went to the music store behind his back and signed for electric guitar, electric bass, amps, and a PA. So now we had the whole thing. We had the rig. We did that gig, and we just kept going. This is when the Vietnam War was really hitting it. In fact, the year I graduated from high school, 1966, we played at a club in Reno for about 5 weeks, and this was five sets a night. There were no child labor laws in the music biz, and we started to meet returning Vietnam vets, 1966. That was just like really the beginning for us. So from 66 to 69, when we finally went to LA with our record deal, we learned a lot of material. And so by the time we got to LA, we were playing Somebody to Love. Do you know that song by the Jefferson Airplane? And hand me that acoustic guitar, would you? I mean, I can just kind of play it from memory. When the truth, when the truth is found to be lies, and all your friends and you dies. Don't you want somebody to love? Don't you need somebody to love? Don't, whatever, I want to love. You better find somebody to love. Your eyes, they look like. So that's, I mean, I think that's rock and roll. That was it's certainly, you know what that is? That's acid rock. Okay. So there's the acid rock, which really went out on a limb. I mean, the Grateful Dead, and all that. So, but I didn't play the solo in that. So yes, I could play rhythm. I'm a shredding rhythm player. So Addie left the band, and then I had to learn how to play lead, and I spent every day, all day for a year. And at the end of that year, I had done the solo on our Fanny cover of Badge, which is still highly touted today. So yes, I can play rock and roll, but it took me a while, And part of our problem was that people had never seen girls playing electric guitar, being in a whole, in a contained band. See, when we got to LA, we knew how to play, and we were self-formed. We were not put together by guys in the industry, and that's really important to understand. Everything that the Svelts did, the Svelts became. Oh yeah, that was the name of our band. The Svelts became Wild Honey, and Wild Honey is the group that played at the Troubadour at Open Hoot Night and got the deal. And then after we signed, Addie split. We changed our name to Fanny, and we got through a whole series of girls who auditioned and whom we hung out with. Became Fanny with Nikki Barclay, and that is the band that started to release albums in 1970, 71, 72, and 73. 4 albums. That was a complete and total journey. But to answer your question, yes, I do play rock and roll.
All right, thank you. We have another question here from Tai Kavika Tengan. He says, such great stories. Could you say something on your thoughts on the place of music in responding to the current othering of Asian Americans, particularly in the light of the attack on Vilma Kari in New York City last week?
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of violence against Asian Americans, Asian Pacific, but let's face the facts. That has been happening since the 18th century. Okay, it's just now, again, resurging with terrible consequences. So let's don't forget that the Chinese were totally discriminated against in San Francisco. They had to live down, out of sight in hovels. They helped build the railroad. They were murdered, and Filipinos were not allowed to marry, so would come here and work, and were not allowed to bring their women, so on and so forth. So, I think we need, in our own way, to fight back. I'm not saying to start a revolution, but I think we need to move together in groups and be in solidarity and not take it. I'm 73 years old. I'm not getting out a lot right now because of COVID and because I'm having these chemo treatments. But if I were and I saw somebody attacking an Asian American, any Asian American, or berating a child, or doing whatever people do that causes such suffering, and it just comes out of such ignorance and hate and whatnot, I would definitely say something. I mean, if I had to, I would put my body in between. I think people need to really, in a way, take responsibility in that type of circumstances, and I think we should move in groups. Personally, I wouldn't go even to Northampton. I don't live that far from Northampton. We live in Goshen, Massachusetts. We're in the Five Colleges area. So right in Northampton is Smith College, and then you have Amherst, Hampshire, UMass. I mean, it's a huge demographic. But I don't think I would walk downtown by myself in any town in, especially San Francisco, New York, Minneapolis, Chicago, Detroit, you name it. I don't think I would walk down the street by myself. I would make sure I was walking with at least one other person and that we were alert to fighting back. I mean, all my life I've been a nice Filipina. I understand that it's cultural, but I'm sick of that role, to tell you the truth. So I'm ready to not take it anymore, and that's really my statement.
Okay. Thank you, June. That was awesome.
Yeah.
We've got another question from JC Richards. Hi, Junie. It's your buddy from New Jersey, JC Richards. Big smiley. You look absolutely terrific. I'm
Hi.
curious if you have a new CD being released in the near future. I'm beyond excited for new music since I've enjoyed Fire in the Street when it was released. Much love and respect to you, dear Anne, too. Lots of
Okay.
kisses after that.
Yeah. All right,
Hey,
get back.
JC.
Yeah, an interesting thing happened to me. Yes, the answer is yes. And I'm really excited about three songs that I wrote just after the new year. And I think it was right after the inauguration, I realized I wasn't feeling that boot on my neck. I wasn't feeling, all of a sudden I felt liberated. I didn't know how much I felt constrained, and all the words that you can say about not feeling good and feeling like you're, uh, everybody was being discriminated against. I felt anyway. So in particular, I felt that, and I felt the lid was blowing out. So in 5 days, I wrote three songs, and I love them all. Uh, the first one's called "Girls Don't Dream" (parentheses the big lie). The second one is "Too Close to the Bone." That's really an intense song. And the third one is "Eagle to the Moon." Now, you can tell, girls don't dream. It's a pretty song, but it's a really intense song. I think people are really going to be surprised by that. Too Close to the Bone is exactly what I'm talking about. You cut it too close to the bone, dude, or dudes. And I'm really upset. But what I like is that the words came out in a certain way that say exactly how I feel without any extra, any extra. And Eagle to the Moon is kind of a stream of consciousness. It's a fun tune, but it is rock. It is a rock tune. And Earl Slick, who is with us right now, and has been with us off and on because Lee is his son. I don't know if you know who Earl Slick is, but he's, like a world famous guitar player. Played with David Bowie, played on Station to Station. He played on Double Fantasy with Lennon and Yoko. I mean, he's got it going on. In fact, here's one of his guitars. I'm sure he won't mind my showing it to you. It just arrived the other day, and of course he opened the box. I was sitting out in the sun, and he brought it out and showed it to me. Look at this neck,
Lovely.
you know.
Lovely.
So this is a special neck, and it's more like a Gibson neck on a telly body. It's a Nashville guitar. Anyway, so he's been playing on my live stream since, I don't know, October or something. So basically, when I call the song, he says, just tell me the key. You know, so he's Chain Gang, tell me the key. Okay, great. And so by the time we got to these tunes, we were really tuned in. And there's a specific, especially with Lee playing, there's a specific song that we grabbed. And I'm going to use mostly, what's on the basic and just add just a little. We've done just a few overdubs. Wow. He did one overdub that's a 3 stacked guitar on Ebo, which he's got Ebo down. And you're going to love hearing it. So anyway, the cover is going to be a photo that was taken in Woodstock probably in, well, when did did I move into that house? It's when we released Ladies before because we rehearsed for the Ladies on the Stage tour, which is I'll tell you that story in just a second. Um, it's a photo of me. I didn't know it was being taken. I just gotten up and I have a robe on and boots, boots that are for going in the snow. I'm playing the drums, and it's a really funky photo. But it's just a certain feel to it, you know. And I don't really have that many clothes on, but I do have clothes. I have coat, some clothes, and boots, and so that's I'm going to use that for the cover, black and white. I'll probably release it on both vinyl and and CD, because I guess people are moving to vinyl, whatever. And I'll have old stuff, even demos from from those days, and brand new stuff like the 3 songs I just described, and a few other things. So I'm pretty excited about that. And I'm excited about the documentary that's going to be released. It'll be going to film festivals all this year. So that's called Fanny, The Right to Rock, and it's directed by Bobby Joe Hart. She's from Canada. And so, a lot of people were interviewed for that. A lot of my friends and a lot of people that Joe Elliott, whom I've never met, but I've certainly talked to, and he's friends. Slick knows everybody. So, Gaylan Dorsey was a bass player also with Bowie, and Bonnie Raitt, and you name it. Linda Valentine, Sheree Carino. So uh, it's really a look at the right of women's role right now, women's rights rock, the Asian American, the violence against Asian Americans, and let's face it, all over the world there's a lot of stuff going on. So I'm going to try to pack as much stuff in this new CD as I can. I'm also going to start releasing the chapters that I've recorded of my audiobook, of the book Land of a Thousand Bridges. Anne actually thinks that's the most important thing I've ever done. And I narrate, but I also created the Foley and the background music. Some of it is the old music that, even the Svelts, or music that I for it. And I called John Sebastian up and I said, I did a little piece of Do You Believe in Magic? Is it okay if I use it? And I sent it to him. He said, oh, that's great. No problem. So a lot of little stuff that I put in behind to evoke the feeling of the 60s and what I'm talking about. So that's really important. So I think I've only done 13 chapters so far, and I've been working on it for like 5 years, but I can't do it all the time, get the girls' camps and, everything else that we do here.
So is it?
But let me get back to Ladies on the Stage, which was, pardon me?
Oh, nothing. I interrupted.
I'm sorry.
I thought there was a gap.
Did
So
you say
excuse
someone
me.
say something?
No.
Okay, I just wanted because I had mentioned Ladies on the Stage. Okay, so it's early 77, and that a lot of those songs were written in Woodstock, and that was when I was just the reason I left Fanny, without getting into so many complications of why I did leave. I fell apart. It was not drugs. It was really basically grief. It was hard for me to leave, but I ended up in a summer house in New York in the winter, and then in Woodstock. And in a couple of years, I ended up in this house that was Buddhist monks were living in their house for about 5 years while they built their retreat at the top of the mountain. This is on Mead Mountain Road. And that's where this photo was taken that I saw, a black and white photo that's going to be the cover of the next album. And that was a really important time for me. And we recorded Ladies on the Stage, and we rehearsed for a month in that house. And we had a rockin' band. Oh my gosh, it was so good. And then the record company sold our album to EMI, and they completely just squashed it. They never did a thing with it. Oh, and we were supposed to go on the road with Peter Allen. The whole tour was booked and he got AIDS. So, it was not a good time for that album. And of course, we worked for a month and we paid the band to rehearse with us. This is a big outlay, and then the company fires us, and it's a bit ridiculous. I asked you to save it. she did. And then, oh, right. And around that time, Slick was supposed to go on the road with John Lennon for 2 years, and John Lennon gets shot. I mean, this is well, actually, no, 77 was when the album was released and John was shot, 81. But I mean, to me, that period gets compressed to all these tragedies, that were just basically bad luck stuff. And I really couldn't think about Fanny. I mean, Fanny was so hard for me to think of. So I put that behind me and I just moved on to women's music. It was very spiritual and it was a new home for me. And then IMA gets founded with Ann and Angela Davis and Roma Barron in 86. So that's kind of my life compressed. But my book too starts in 75 because so much happened before 1975. All of Fanny, all of the Svelts, diving into Buddhism and beginning to understand. And that's when I realized, oh, there's some hope. This suffering I'm going through, was explained really through the teachings and the many teachers I was so happy and lucky to work with. So sorry. So now you have another question?
Yes. This is from Aaron Goldstein from Atlanta. It's good to hear you playing music again.
Hi, Aaron.
I look forward to the IMA live stream resuming soon. A question for you. In your recent
Yes.
conversation with Toshi Regan, she revealed
Mm-hmm.
that she didn't know you were in Fanny until she bought one of your records. How much time between
Yes.
meeting Toshi and Toshi learning you were in Fanny? Thank you.
Yeah, I've got to ask her that. I would assume it was 6 months to a year. And I don't even think she said anything to me. The first time she spoke about Fanny, she was my bass player on a couple of gigs, and we did a gig at Mount Holyoke. Actually, that's another one of the colleges that is in this area. And she says, June, sometime during the gig, you should really talk about Fanny. I mean, and I said, listen, that's behind me. I don't want to talk about it. I already did it. I was really afraid of the whole thing because it was so hard for me to realize that, what I needed to do was to grow up, to learn how to be a person, how to be an authentic human being. And I was so frightened because I didn't know how to get to that. It was an intuitive feeling. We gotta get out of this place if it's the last thing we ever do. And I discussed it with Jean. We were in a hotel room, probably, I think in either Liverpool or Glasgow. I know it was one of those cities. And we're sitting on bed. And we were both crying, because I said, I cannot do this anymore. And she understood. So she's the first person I discussed it with. And then we had a band meeting. And what I did was I promised I would not leave the band till we found my replacement. And back in the day, who was going to be my replacement? But, I made that promise. We did a gig in Detroit, and we saw this woman, Patty Quattro, playing in her brother's band. And I was standing backstage or by the side of the stage by Jean, and I turned to her and I said, I think she could be the one. So we courted her for a few months, and she she agreed to be my replacement. And so I'm very grateful to her. She jumped in there with Jean, and it's funny, because I was at a rock conference in Austin, and I don't know, maybe 5 years ago or something. And she and her sisters, Susie Quattro was there, and Ann, I think another sister, Annie, where there were 3 of them, and they did this workshop, and I attended it. And they were so happy to see me, attend, just sit there. And afterwards, Patty and I had this long talk, and she said, June, it was really good that Jean was not in, that you left the band, essentially. because you were so dominant, and it was the first time I felt that she could really step out and be who she was. And I thought that was an interesting thing to hear. And I think, to a large extent, that's really true. A lot of bandmates and a lot of people have gotten really mad at me because I'm pretty dominant. I have my ideas, I have my songs. It finally got to the point of slam and bass when I said, look, just, oh no, maybe that was Fanny point one before we went on the last. Anyway, I'll tell you about that. It's like, so I came up with, look, just try my idea one time, and we will all know if it sucks. Like I'll know right away if it sucks. It's just like maybe getting it in and out of a section, whatever. And if it doesn't suck, then we can argue about it. But I guess I really have my ideas. They just come to me. I hear them. But this thing about Fanny Point One, let me tell you this story really quickly because there's all my life so many synchronicities have happened. So I'm living in a different house in Woodstock with a woman by the name of Jackie Robbins, who ended up being the bass player on Chris Williamson's Changer and the Changed. And how I got turned onto that is a whole story. But anyway, so Jean comes to visit, and it's the worst snowstorm, in I don't know how long. We're sitting in the kitchen, the snow is flying around. There's nothing we can do. We're just kind of sitting. Three of us are sitting around talking. The phone rings. It's on the table. She picks it up. I pick it up, and it's for Jean. And she goes, uh-huh. Yeah. And I had just asked her, did Fanny finally break up? She said, yeah. They had done the Casablanca album with Butterboy. And she said, yeah, it's definitely, we finally broke up. She picks up the phone, and it's Hollywood calling to say, you have a hit. Butterboy, totally unexpected. You have to come back to LA and put a band together so you can go on the road and we can make some money. So somehow, by hook or by crook, I got her to the airport. She flies to LA. About a week later, she said, I'd really like you to do this tour with me. So I went to LA, and that's when we got with Patty wasn't on that tour. So it was me, and we got Bree to play drums. And so she calls me. I said, I'd like you to be on this tour. So we got Bree in, and I had started a band actually in New York called Smiles. That was my deal. I could bring one person from my band, and plus I brought the sound guy who was just really great, Gary Helfrich. And so I brought Patty Machetta, who played percussion, had a great voice, and Wendy Haas Mull, who's married now to Martin Mull. She had been in Svelte and Wild Honey, and she'd come to LA also and lived at Fanny Hill. I mean, Fanny Hill was a whole girl thing. Girls came in and out, we were playing together, we were having, whatever, our lives. It was quite the thing. So anyway, so I went on that tour. The five of us went on that tour, and that's what I call, would that be Fanny Point 2? Because, I feel like the Casablanca album was Fanny Point 1. And Butterboy, by the way, is written about David Bowie. I mean, a lot of people know that, but, they dated for like a year or something like that. And Slick,
Okay.
of course, was the guitar player. Oh my God. So all these synchronicities happened, and we went on that tour. We came back and we kept writing. We kept rehearsing. We had a place in Malibu, right on the beach, by Hamburger Stand. We had a rehearsal place, and we rehearsed. We just loved playing together. And we got a record deal with Dick James Music. This kid was after me for like a year or two after I left Fanny. He started writing letters to me right away. What are you doing? So anyway, me and Jean are in Beverly Hills, okay, at a lawyer's office, one of Jean's friends. I mean, we literally had our pens over the paper, and the guy says, oh, by the way, there's just one thing. We want you to change the name to Fanny. And I'm like, what? I have a directive from above, and I have to listen to these directives. That's why I left Fanny. I had to. That's why I helped start IMA. I knew that there was work to be done, in that area with girls in music and owning a place. I mean, I'm in our recording studio. We own all of this, if you can see it. There's our SSL board. We own the property. It's a big deal. And so when I get a directive from above, this is a huge directive. You can never be in a band called Fanny. Now, why is that? Because it can never be done again. I can't be that 21, 22, 23-year-old girl who learned lead guitar in 1 year and just worked her fanny off like night and day. I can't be that woman. We can't do those songs again. It'll never be done. It'll never be done again in just the way that we did it. And that's a beautiful thing. We created the frame that needed to be created because there was no frame. No one had ever seen it. People would laugh at us when we walked on stage. I mean, it would change, but so anyway, that is my directive, and that's why Fanny Walked the Earth is called Fanny Walked the Earth. I can't be in a band called Fanny. And when he said, we want you to change your name to Fanny, oh, thank God I hadn't started to sign that piece of paper because my pen stopped and I said, no, I can't do that. Immediately, I knew. And that has never changed. That is a directive from above. It is unbreakable. I knew that the way that I know that I'm going to get through this cancer. I'm not going to die because I got more work to do. And the ancestors have told me that. These are directives that I have to follow, and they're really strict. So I follow them, and the results are good. Look, I'm still alive. I've written these songs. I have another album. I wrote a book. I'm writing a second book. I've created the audiobook. Who does that? Someone who listens to the directives. Someone who actually listens. So.
Okay, we've got a very tough question for you, June. This comes from Rebecca, and she says, "Hi, June. Thanks so much for this awesome talk. Wondering what your favorite Filipino food is. Do you have any memories of Filipino parties and music growing up that you'd like to share? Lots of love."
Well, number one, I'd have to say ginataan is my favorite dessert. And my mom used to make well, of course, a whole pig that's cooked in the ground in the sand at the gaitai, the lechon. Incredible. I've never tasted anything like it. And it was served on unfurled baby banana leaves. That was each of our plates. And of course, we ate with our fingers. I couldn't believe it. We moved here, I was 13. I used to use a knife and a fork. It was just, so horrible. Anyway, so lechon is huge. But my mom also used to make this dish that was, what did she call it? It was rice. It was a big pile of rice with fried eggs on top and some sort of a meat, turkey or whatever with the rice. And on the bottom, ringed. I mean, of course, this was a big plate because there'd be like 5 to 10 people eating fried bananas. So, the those would be my favorite.
Okay.
Puto with fresh grated, has to be fresh grated coconut puto. Incredible.
Oh, yes. That sounds delicious. Can you talk
Yeah.
a bit about your experience in LA and how you were received there? I'm thinking of the jam sessions you describe in your book. You talk about the exoticization and sexism, but also how your band quickly got taken seriously. How did that work? Also, can you talk about how you work with girls, young women today who come to your camp?
Mm,
And let me just, I switched screens and I didn't get the person's name. Let me just very quickly tell you who that was. Give me just
That
a
was
moment.
from Monisha Gupta, I believe.
Oh, from Monisha Dasgupta, my very good friend.
okay. Okay, so let's start with the Hollywood part. As described, we were we had created and were stepping into a frame that hopefully people could start to recognize these are women who could play. So that was the first huge task we had in front of us. And how did we accomplish that? By getting better and better. That's the only way. Oh, we got so good that we got better than a lot of the guy bands. But in terms of being respected and accepted, number one, we were in that wonderful house. You know, it was just a few blocks up from the Chateau Marmont. I mean, you turn up Marmont Lane from Sunset, and you pass the chateau on the right, and you go a couple more blocks, windy blocks, and the road ended. And we were the last road on the left. And Melvin Belli's house was right beside ours. We never saw him, but we could hear his dog. So we had this house that Hedy Lamarr had owned, but we didn't really know that, you know. It was 3 stories. It was a Spanish style, like a Spanish style castle almost. It was totally beautiful inside, and it was electric. But you know, we didn't know that Hetty. You know, she helped develop Wi-Fi, what became Wi-Fi. She was a scientist, and man, that house was totally electric. So um, the word got around that there were these chicks, you know, up at this house where you were lucky if you could get invited to come jam or hang out. And, you know, that started to happen. I remember the first famous guy who came by was Hal Blaine, the drummer of the Wrecking Crew. And I remember we were sitting in the living room. He's sitting over there, you know, at the bottom of the stairs, and we're pretty much sitting on the other side. And he's just staring at us, and we're staring at him. And we didn't know really what to say because he's like such a great famous drummer. But we somehow struck up a conversation. So that was the first person, famous person who came with. I mean, we didn't know very many women who played, you know. So the first women whom we met, believe it or not, were the girls in Bertha. And we were completely blown away. I mean, they were so good. I thought, oh, I'm never going to play like the guitar player. You know, I was in awe of that band. And Rosemary Butler singing, she played bass and she's singing off to the, she wasn't even the main singer, you know. Liver Favela on drums. Oh, they were so good. So until Bonnie Raitt, I didn't really meet any other women who were so good. And the way that I found out about Bonnie, we were playing a gig in Austin. And after the sound check, I usually was the one who would just kind of hang out, you know, listening to the music played over the PA. So everybody else, you know, split and I don't know, went backstage. But I'm standing there. And I remember there was a guy with a push broom. He was cleaning the floor, which totally gleamed. And then I heard this voice over the PA, and I listened to a couple of songs, and I walked up to the sound man, and I said, "Who is that?" And he said, "Oh, it's this new artist. Her name's Bonnie Raitt. This is her first album just came out." And I'm like, "Whoa, I gotta get that album. I gotta get into this." Well, that night after our first set, the door knocks. There's a knock at the door, and I guess our road manager had met whoever wanted to come in, right? So he opens the door and he says, "Yeah, there's somebody here who wants to meet you." It was Bonnie Raitt with like 3 guys, you know. And she's, "Hi, I'm Bonnie Raitt." I'm saying, this is so incredible. Well, anyway, so the first time she came to LA, she called me up and asked me if she could stay Fanny Hill. I'm saying, "Yeah, sure." So she stayed downstairs in Jean's bedroom. And you know, I mean, she knew I was a fan of hers, and but we met each other on sort of an equal level. I introduced her to Lowell George, and she was off to the races because she didn't play electric guitar yet. She didn't play electric slide. So hanging with Lowell, I mean, you could not hang with Lowell and not learn like a million things. I mean, he was so generous and he was just so enthusiastic about everything. He was a warrior of licks, he was a warrior of sound, he was a warrior of writing songs and just trying stuff out. He was completely without fear. And I learned so much from him, and especially he he said, "June, you have got to learn the blues," because I mean, I didn't know the blues. I did play rock and roll, but I didn't understand. I love funk. I love funk. But I didn't play the blues. So he said, "You got to learn it." So he turned me on to Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters, and my mind exploded. And then Bonnie said, "You got to listen to Fred McDowell." So I went and bought Fred because she said he plays such simple lines. And so between the two of them, so generous, you know. And I actually drove Bonnie around the very first time she looked for an electric guitar. She didn't find it at that trip. That was her first foray. And, you know, we both basically have low sound. Um, you know, those opening licks on Ain't That Peculiar, uh, there had to be a special tuning because I can't play that, you know, and I'm not even trying to play that right now, but I did try to kind of go, how did I do that? And I couldn't do it because it's a special tuning. So, because, quite frankly, the sound that we now associate as classic rock was being developed by Elliot Randall, by Skunk Baxter, by Lowell George. Those were the guys who were doing it, you know, who were creating that sound. Not just them, but we played with just about everybody. So I heard it, you know. But in LA, when we were all playing and jamming and getting that respect, let me just mention something. The better the player, the less ego. They weren't trying to put me down. I'm very sensitive to that. I mean, do not come up to me and say, "Hey, I want to jam with you," and I know basically what you're going to do. You're going to play a whole bunch of licks and prove that you're better than me, and I hate that. I mean, I can feel it, and it's like a, you know, you kind of shrink a little bit, but at the same time, you're like, you know, f you. What, you know, really? I mean, that's a waste of time because actually, I was just getting better and better. So, you know, I was not so interested in that, but we were lucky to meet the main, the actual main players of the scene. And they jammed, they loved us. I mean, I remember one time I woke up, I heard someone playing downstairs, you know, and I kind of looked, because we rehearsed in the basement, I just kind of peeped down the stairs and it was Dave Mason. I guess he'd been there once before, and he was just sitting there, you know, in a chair with his legs crossed, playing licks over and over again. Because that's how you practice. You play licks over and over again. You don't practice your mistakes. You figure out where it's hard, and practice how to do it right. You know, I always tell my students, don't practice your mistakes. Like, to figure out where it's hard, and work on that little bit. Then move on. So little by little, people just had to surrender to the fact that we were that good, you know. And like I say in the film, I didn't try to talk about it. I just did it. That's what we did. We just did it. We didn't ask for permission. We were over it by 1966 when we were getting like those sneers and and of course the girls who were standing by the boys never said a word, but we could see their eyes, and we could see when they would nod. If we would say something, they never spoke. Okay, there's always the boys. So the boys led. So the sneers, the whole, and like 5 minutes later they're dancing and they forgot the whole thing. They're falling in love with us. So that's how we did it. Then we just kept gaining respect. We started to get our first big gig really was with the Kinks at the Santa Monica Civic, and we could handle that sound because we'd practiced in sound stages at Warner Brothers, which had bought Reprise. So we practiced in their movie sound lot, right? So we had our passes. We'd drive into the sound lot. We'd go to the assigned sound station. By the way, Lowell and Little Feat were practicing in the sound stage next to us. But that's how we learned to handle a big sound, So by the time we went on the road, we could do it. We didn't have to worry about, well, what is it supposed to be? No. I adjusted my sound between every single song because I didn't, I actually had this one pedal, but it would, for like a year I tried it, but it would keep at sound check. It would keep bringing in the police scanners, and that was really hard to proceed with. And so, I really more or less relied on changing the tone and the volume for each song, So that's one little thing. So getting to IMA, I think the question was how does it relate to what we teach here? And
Yes,
so
I can repeat
okay,
it if you
so
want.
okay,
Also, can you talk about how you work with girls, young women who come to the camp, to the IMA camp?
okay, yeah. Well, number one, we you know, we started IMA in 86, 87. I think we got our 50C and 501c3 in 87. And, you know, believe it or not, well, you can probably believe this, but the IRS did not even understand what we were talking about when we applied. This is a nonprofit organization that exists for women in music, women and girls in music, basically for all of time. You know, it's like, oh, so it's not about world hunger. It's not about, you know, all the sexy things that you want to give money to, because the dominant thought is music is what would the word be in? It's a
Luxury.
it's a luxury. Okay? It is not a luxury. It's so essential, and I can really talk about this. Number one, music causes the left and right brain to have to interact. Therefore, just by learning music and doing it, you get automatically smarter because the left and right brain are interacting. Okay? Number two, music gets right directly to the heart. There is nothing really that gets in the way once you get into it. So the way that we work with the girls is we accept any girl who is interested, or their parents are interested in their being interested, so they send them to us. But the thing is, we have 3 instructors. So in the morning it's vocals, then you have a lunch, then drum percussion, then a little bit of a break, then you get June Millington till dinner time. And the catch-all phrase for me is music is a second language. So I kind of explain the codifying of, you know, why do we have the scale, and how is it built, how are chords built, how are keys built, and that's, you know, when the heads start to explode. But you basically have to do that, and it falls to me to explain that. But I do for mothers, and that is really, really important. We have to know whose shoulders we're standing on. I mean, Sister Rosetta Tharpe, you know, Memphis Minnie, Ella Fitzgerald. I mean, you go on and on. There's so many women who have not only contributed but had built, you know, the skeleton, the shoulders of music. We're standing on their shoulders, so that must be acknowledged, and we listen to their songs, you know. The other thing is that fear, you know, of course you come in with fear. A lot of times you don't know the girls. Maybe you come in with a pod, but a lot of times you don't know the other girls. So how do we work through that, you know? Well, like the drum instructor, we realized the first year, well, every girl's a drummer. You know, you're all pounding on your knees or in the shower. You're singing since you're little. So they have the instruction, but there's always a level of fear that is there, not just because of the music, but because a lot of times girls are kept from interacting with each other, and they're competing for limited resources, let's say, or attention, you know. So how do you deal with that fear? Somehow I realized, oh, I have to seduce these girls into falling in love with not just music, with themselves and each other. But how do you do that? I don't know how you do that. I just make it up every time. You know, I just make it up. I figure out ways to explain, like maybe if you just moved a little bit, you know, maybe you could do that while you're, you know, playing your notes or whatever, or playing the drums. And by the way, performing is acting. You know, even if you don't feel such joy in the moment, you can pretend. You can smile, number one. You can look at your parents or your friends or the audience's eyes. Don't look away, you know. And here's the final piece of resistance that I think is a really important piece of advice, and that is give the gift of 5 seconds after you finish a song. You would be surprised how every single girl, I think, ever who's come to camp, when they finish a song, you know, they're all into it, and they collapse. They look down and they completely collapse. And I said, no, give them 5 seconds. Why? Because your people are here. They want to adore you. That's why you're here. You want that clapping. You want to be adored. And by the way, you just did a great job. So don't collapse. Give them the gift of those 5 seconds, And 5 seconds is a long time if you're holding holding the intent and being with your audience. It's really amazing. It works. And by the way, don't be doing this and kind of straightening out and touch your hair as soon as you finish the song. That's all a distraction, and they all do it. And we tape the rehearsal. And so after they finish rehearsing the entire set on Saturday night, then they rush in the house and makes popcorn and they watch themselves. And I'll never forget, one of my nieces came to camp and she said, I didn't realize I touched my hair so much. When you see it, when you see it's really, you're creating a distraction because it's embarrassing inside that you think you're getting the attention or whatever, so you try to distract, which makes it worse. Anyway, so these are all the things that I point out that have to do with our own self-esteem, that holding the dignity, and lots of bands get formed out of IMA. Lots of bands. And Ann has found that Ann, maybe you can speak about that a little when you realize, come sit over here. When you realize that, by the way, I have a Buddha on my amp, but it hasn't helped with getting the sound. That we realize the power of girls. Here, I'll hold that. My turquoise on the amp also. Girls forming bands and having that unity.
Right. That was one of the things that, as someone who, wanted to change the world when I was young, I never dreamed, or it never occurred to me that girls playing rock and roll and leading bands, like all girl bands or mostly girl bands, how revolutionary that was and how radical it is, and how it is a real game changer because, there's the empowerment factor in and of itself with the girls, but when other girls, what are we bonding on when we're kids? The thing we're bonding on is pop music or rock music or the culture of whatever that is now. And so when the girls see other girls up there doing that thing, especially if they don't know it's not normal,
yeah, we normalize it.
It's a real game changer. Very quickly changes things. So it's way more powerful than I ever dreamed of. I mean, you understood that. I didn't understand that until I saw it over and over.
I got it when I was 15 when we started to play with other girls and we had a sound.
Yeah.
And it just got bigger and funkier,
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, wow, this is really, and we were teaching ourselves here. They have the equipment, they have instructors, so they're able to really get on it pretty quickly. And the first gig that we got for a band, three girls were here jamming after camp because they also can do that. They can come and jam, they can borrow equipment. So they were rehearsing jamming here, and Ann gets a phone call from a place in town that makes bread.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, tell the story. This is a great story.
Yeah, I mean, the way that we first started getting calls, we just started getting calls because people in town realized that they were having these music festivals, that they were doing this and that and the other, and there were no girls involved. There were all the bands were boy bands, and so someone
There's a bread
called
festival,
us.
wasn't
Yeah.
it?
A local bread maker was having a little festival called Wheatstock. And he was like, girls that want to play. And we were like, oh, it just so happens there's some girls out in the barn. Let me see. And that was the very first band that actually
was the
made
band
it
The
out of the
Feel.
barn. Yeah, it was a band called The Feel. And then we've just been it's been nonstop after that. And then we started winning the Battle of the Bands, all our girl bands in the...
very quickly these bands started. And so girls in preteen were watching the older girls who were doing like now big gigs. And they're like, I'm talking about Calliope Jones. And now Calliope Jones, they're in college. And they got an amazing sound and great songs. So all the girls are looking. So you can see the progression, the band and the
And the
kids, for
kids.
example. I mean, we were sitting at one of the gigs of the girls, and the person sitting next to us said, "Do you realize uh, that you've changed the sound of
Scene.
the scene in Northampton?" And we hadn't. I mean, I knew for sure that it was happening because I wanted to be one of the girls. I wanted to be in a band with them. They're having so much fun the same way we did when we were 16, 17. I wanted to be 17. Of course, I couldn't be, but it was just so phenomenal to see the creation. I mean, they would write songs at camp and then they would be performing them and then they would be collaborating. That's what happens, and you never forget that. Even if you don't start a band or you don't stay in a band for too long, you never forget that experience because it is a complete and total immersion in something you cannot help but love. I mean, once you get bitten by music, it is a complete passion and it is so great. And it can be used for expressing love, or as in this case, we're talking about, violence against Asians. You can write songs about that. You can act, do that whole thing and jump up and down like you're playing in a dance and everyone's jumping up and down with you. Whatever you want to do, you can do it, and you can plan it. And you know what? The audience is going to be with you because they want to be with you. Everybody wants to be taken away, and that's the thing I tell the girls. People want you to be successful because if you're not successful, that means they're not successful. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's all tied in. So even if you make a mistake, don't act like you made a mistake. No one's gonna notice. You know, do your thing and just enjoy it the way that just trust in that. So having something else take you away and having that bond, and you live through camp and you live through June Millington, to be quite frank with you, because
The steel.
yeah, Feel the Steel. I did a lead guitar class. I call it Feel the Steel. Um, and I'm draconian about finding the one and staying on the one. Don't rush the one. A lot of times we'll have a class and I'll be talking about the one, how important it is, so we'll all just kind of pretend we're playing one bar. And I'll say, wait, don't go to bar two. I didn't stamp your passport yet, Between beat 4 and beat 1 of the next bar is like that's a heavy duty space. You got to fall in it just right. But that's the funk, so I'm trying to pass that on. It's not just like you kind of, no, you got to be on it. You have to play every beat like your life depends on it. And I mean that sincerely. Like your life depends on it. And that is really life, you know? Have that intent and do it to the max. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. We've got one more question here, and we're getting toward the end, and it would be
Oh, we
great
are? And I never even got my electric guitar
we'd
sound.
love to hear some more music, but let me ask this
Yeah.
question. This is from Andy Maricap. I think I got the name right. And it
Okay.
says, "Hi, Junie. I'm a Filipino based here in Canada. And only when I was browsing some video on YouTube that I discovered you guys playing in the Beat Club. And I think that that piece also drew me in. It's Ain't That Peculiar, I believe, is the piece that's
Uh-huh.
on YouTube. It's awesome.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
was blown away by the songs that you played, especially the way you played your guitar. I was hooked instantly. God
Mhm.
bless. And oh, this is a word I don't know. Mabuhay. Keep on rocking.
Mabuhay, mabuhay.
Mabuhay.
Yeah.
With that, I think it wasn't really a question. I think it was more of a request to hear some music, maybe.
Yeah, and you know what? If I can get this, why is this? Did it get
The
unplugged?
volume, is it?
Huh?
It's not just the volume, is it?
No,
You went down
something
that
is.
low.
Something is not. Here, give me that guitar again. Maybe I'll try it one more time. And if that doesn't work, maybe we get another guitar. I mean, this is my go-to guitar. It's my '57 Les Paul. which by the way, I bought from this guy Kent Henry, who was in a band, in the band that did Ride Captain Ride. Do you remember that song?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, if you listen to that song, anybody call it up on YouTube. All the licks were done on this guitar, which is did this get unplugged? Which is pretty incredible.
I hear it.
Yeah, you hear it, but you don't. That's so
I heard the
absurd.
reverb.
I heard the reverb. Well, okay. See, if I bring this way up, it does nothing. That's so odd. Because I sound checked it.
More drive, no brightness.
No. But here, you see where this is plugged into my tuner? No, not the guitar. Okay, just unplug that. Put it right into the amp. Unplug what's there.
Oh, and we've got another comment
there we go.
from
Yeah.
Melly. Revolutionaries indeed. I cannot fathom the obstacles that you faced as young women in the music field that was so male dominated. You are such an inspiration. Thank you from a young Filipina American. And again, I'm going to mess up your language. Utang na loob.
Utang na loob? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
Loob. Okay, yes.
Oh,
We are
thank you.
forever grateful.
Oh, thank you so much.
Melinda, that was from. I couldn't get the whole name
Melinda?
the first time
Okay.
through. Yes.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because when I was growing up, when we were growing up, the whole Millington family, people spoke to us in English, even though they're all Filipino, in the family. And, or if they asked us a question in Tagalog, we totally understood it and we'd answer back in English. So unfortunately, no one made us speak, Tagalog, but I understood every single word, So I have the accent, really, anong pangalan mo, or ikaw ay magandang maganda, or stuff like that, which means you are very beautiful. Tagalog, to emphasize something, they just say the word twice. Magandang maganda. Maganda is beautiful. Ikaw ang magandang maganda. You're so beautiful. Anyway, I thought that I'd break down a little bit of Hey Bulldog because it's so incredible. First of all, that John wrote the song kind of as a throwaway, because he liked the James Bond themes. Like that kind of thing. So that's why he has. Yeah. Let me see. Boom. Right? So I'm playing the chorus. And the arpeggio that was written on strings was Paul Buckmaster. He couldn't remember if he wrote it or not, but it had to have been him because that's where I met him, was at Apple Studios, which, by the way, the Apple Studios were right under the Beatles, offices. So I'll never forget meeting him, and he became one of my best friends. He taught me so much about arranging. Anyway, so the arpeggio that he was... Then you get to the minor 4. Right? So you can talk to. So everyone's just pumping on the main chord. You can talk. So you can talk to me. You can talk to me. You can talk to me. If only you can talk to me. I'm in the wrong key. So can you hear that kind of James Bond thing? Maybe I'll...
Yeah.
Right? So there's a lot of stuff going on, but you don't realize it when you're just hearing the tune, and in the when I was considering playing Fanny for the foremothers section, very early on, we started our camps here in 2002 because we owned the property. We moved here in 2001, and now we could do stuff that we couldn't do before, like have a girls' camp because we own the property. And so I played Hey Bulldog really loud over the speakers, and I was by myself, and I just simply burst into tears because I thought, who is that playing? I mean, I'd like to meet that girl, I'd like to meet that woman. I just trying to figure out, how did we do that really? And, we did that tune at clubs in LA. We just loved it and we got into it and we just got into the spirit of the whole thing. But let me put the words here. So, Alex, let me just kind of set it. So he D minor, A minor, A minor. So now you get to the key, which is C, right? He starts on the 2, which is D minor, C, 1, 2, D minor, 6, right? So he goes 2, 6, A minor, 2, A minor, 1, 2, 5, 1. Now check this out. Then he goes to the D again, but it's D major. Then he goes to back to the D minor. It's so clever. So, oh man, I can do this. Too loud. Hold on 1 second. I'll bring this down. Boy, this is such a powerful amp. Incredible. Okay. Yeah. Sheepdog standing in the rain. Bullfrog doing it again. Some kind of happiness is measured out in miles. What makes you think you're something special when you smile? Shine like no one understands. Jackknife in your sweaty hands. Some kind of innocence is measured out in years. I know just what it's like to listen to my fears. You can talk to me. You can talk to me. You can talk to me. If you're lonely, you can talk to me. Sorry. So, that's how the tune goes, and I can try to do the arpeggio. Let me see. You can talk to me. Sorry. You can talk. You can talk to me. 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 You get that thing, attitude thing. When you're with a band and this all is happening, Jean never does that. She just talk to me, she's pumping on the 1, and I'm moving on the arpeggio. See, and we're singing the vocal, which has its own thing. You can talk to me, you can talk to me, and it all goes like it all fits in. Like it's a puzzle, it's pretty darn incredible. So I thought I'd kind of break that down.
Okay, thank you so much, June. So thank you
Are
for
we out of
talking
time?
to us. We're right
Okay.
at 12 midnight your time. This has been amazing. I'm going to save the chat if I can, because I wasn't able to get to everybody, and there's so many wonderful comments for you.
Can I say real quick, you can
Yes,
write to me
please,
at June Millington at JuneMillington@gmail.com. So you can ask me questions there.
Okay, and we'll look forward to the return of your, is it Thursday sessions? I only ever made one.
Yeah, I got to get through this chemo thing.
Yeah, so we'll look forward to that and down the road a bit. So
Exactly.
we're
And I can't
waiting.
wait to get back either.
All right, so thank you everybody for coming. I'm gonna save the comments, so keep them coming. And we'll say good night now. And do you mind if I close out by putting up Ain't That Peculiar?
Oh, no, not at all.
Because a
Thank you
number
so
of
much,
people have mentioned
everyone.
it. Yeah.
Aloha, mabuhay, ginataan.
Salamat.
Salamat. Yes, walang anuman. Thank you.
You do me wrong, but still I'm crazy about you. Stay away too long and I can't do without you. Now every chance you get, you seem to hurt me more and more. But each hurt makes my love much stronger than before. I know flowers grow through rain, but how can love grow through pain? Ain't that peculiar? Ain't that peculiar? You tell me lies that should be obvious to me, but I'm so much in love with you, baby, that I don't want to see that the things you do and say are designed to make me blue. Now it's a doggone shame my love for you makes all your lies seem true. Now if the truth makes love last longer, why do lies make mine stronger? No, ain't that peculiar? Ain't that peculiar?